In this video, I thought I would talk about why we as parents are so fearful of our children having smartphones. So in pretty much every generation, there has been something new that has brought fear to parents. That could have been cigarettes or vaping. It could have been the invention of the television or even electricity. There's always going to be something new that faces a challenge for parents. And the main reason that we find that such a challenge is because for all we might be in that world as well. So for example, we as parents have smartphones and use smartphones. Something we have zero experience of is growing up with that thing. So unless you are a very young parent, chances are you didn't grow up in the smartphone era. Particularly if your children are now of... No, let's start this again. So there is always going to be things that emerge that are new, So there are always going to be new things emerging in the world that create challenges for parents. And that's happened for many, many generations, from things like the invention of the motor car to the invention of televisions to cigarettes, vaping, and so on. There's always going to be something that is kind of worrying and alien and scary for parents. Now, smartphones, you would think, would be something that... No. I think maybe we just don't forget all about that stuff, okay? So as parents of a certain age, we are used to using smartphones ourselves. I would say the majority of parents have their own smartphone. The big difference, though, and the reason I think that we fear it so much as parents, is that for all we use these phones ourselves and we're using them when we're in the world of the smartphone era, we didn't have it when we were younger. So if you are kind of a parent of a child of an age that has a smartphone or is about to get a smartphone, chances are that you didn't grow up with a smartphone, unless you're a super young parent. It wasn't something that existed. You know, I'm 39 at the time of this recording, and I remember getting my first mobile phone, which was when I was 16, and that was not a smartphone. You know, a smartphone came much, much later. Although even then, I'm pretty sure my parents would have worried about the mobile phone era. But it's very different now, isn't it? Because we didn't have access to the internet on those phones. And so I do think that one of the biggest issues we face as parents is that we did not have the same when we were growing up. So there's two things with that. First of all, we have no experience of being a child with a smartphone because we haven't had that. We might have them now as adults, but we have no experience of being a child with a smartphone. The second issue with that is we then have no experience of being parented with a smartphone. So much of what we are teaching our children is what we have learned from our parents, maybe wrongly or rightly. So it might be that you agreed with some of the ways your parents parented you, or you completely disagree and doing it completely different. But you are, even subconsciously, basing your parenting decisions somewhat on the parenting decisions that your parents made. Now with smartphones, you can't do that because you weren't parented in the smartphone era. So you don't know how they would have parented you. You haven't seen how your friends have been parented with their smartphone. You've not seen that and experienced being that child who has been parented. Just as you've not experienced being that child with a smartphone. And of course, we all look back with a nostalgia and we all look back with gratitude that, oh, thank God we didn't have those phones when we were younger because our childhoods were blissful and wonderful and rose-tinted and everything. And so we obviously want the same for our children, that they shouldn't have a smartphone either because we didn't. So why do they need it? If we didn't have one, then why should they have them? The reality is we are living in a very, very different world now. And everything is constantly evolving. And as parents, it's actually really important that we keep up with that evolution rather than looking back to when we were younger and saying, well, hang on, it's fine because we didn't have them, so they don't need them. We are living in a different world now. And actually, omitting your child from that world and keeping them away from that world might protect them in many ways. Don't get me wrong, there are many negativities when it comes to the online world, many of which I talk about and I've talked about in other videos. But by omitting them from that world, we're also omitting them from the friendships, the communication, the access to the outside world. And so it's a real balance of working out, do we want to take them out of that world to protect their well-being, or are we actually going to leave them with feelings of loneliness and being left out and not knowing what's happening in the world and not knowing what's happening with their friends, and maybe not being invited to things because their friends have no way to invite them to those things? I mean, we don't have a landline in our household, so my daughters cannot ring their friends' landlines from our landline because that doesn't exist. And so by cutting them out, by saying you're not having a phone, you're almost omitting them from that world that everyone else is in. The only way it would really work was if we all said as parents, no phones, absolutely no child in the UK will have a phone until they're age 16, when really we're only delaying the problem then anyway. But that's the only way it's going to work, because of course then you're going to omit your child from what is now the reality of the modern world, the digital world. So I just thought I would raise that as a thought for you, why it is you might have this inner fear. And of course, there are dangers out there in the online world, just as much as there are dangers everywhere for your child when they're walking to school, crossing the road, when they are getting in a car. There are so many dangers, obviously, that we would love to bubble wrap our children from, but we can't. We have to let them live and learn and grow and know how to face those dangers and know how to protect themselves and avoid those dangers. And we can help guide them through that path to being a safe human and to living a happy life. So if parenting a child through the smartphone era does terrify you, and if you feel you haven't got a clue how to manage your child's smartphone use, maybe they've already got a smartphone or they are soon to be getting their first smartphone, then I would highly recommend getting my course, the Be Phone Smart course. Now, the great thing with this course is it isn't just for the parent. There is a whole big section for the parents looking at things like managing your child's phone use from your own phone, having the right conversations with your child, helping them understand why it's important that you manage their activity, how to manage the social media world for them, and so much more. But what's really unique about this course is there's also a section for the child, because this is their moment to have their freedom and have their autonomy and their independence. So they also need to learn the importance of digital well-being, the negative impact phones can have, and how they can actually reduce their use. And the other thing is that section also talks to the child about why it's important to you as their parent. So I will pop the link below for the Be Phone Smart online course. It's all pre-recorded. There's both videos and written booklets. So if you prefer to just read it through, you can do that, or you can watch the videos. And I really hope it helps you understand the online world for your child and help guide them through it. And if you've got any questions at all, just please feel free to pop them in the comments. Take care.